Well, another one of those nights. Fourth take. Oh, I try to get these videos done in one take so I can move on to another one, another song to talk about, but sometimes mistakes happen and, well, more than halfway up my fantasy playlist, March 18th, 1989. It's a 45 song playlist. We're up to number 19, a mainstream record, forgotten all about it. Listened to it on YouTube, sounded good. Appreciate it more now than I did at the time. You're Not Alone by Chicago at number 19 from Chicago 19. Chicago, they were such a prolific group. 19 albums in about 20 years. They were rolling out one album after another, particularly in the 70s. Of course, their commercial appeal somewhat leveled off in the 80s, just a little bit. But gosh, their first one of their first records, the brilliant, scintillating Question 67 and 68. Does anybody remember that? One of my favorite Chicago records. Originally released in 1969, went to number 71 on Billboard's Hot 100. It was re-released later, but I'll get into that in just a minute. Then 1970. Oh my God, 1970 happened for Chicago big time. The spring of 1970, Make Me Smile, top 10. 25 to 6 to 4, top 10 in the summer of 1970 for Chicago. Doesn't anybody know what time it is? Top 10 for Chicago in the fall of 1970. I remember at Christmas of 1970, I wanted every record that came out. Give me all the great rock and roll R&B records. And Chicago was among the acts I wanted to get. As far as an album by Chicago, singles by Chicago, I'd be rolling in hog heaven. I did get a double album of Diana Ross and the Supremes' Greatest Hits. Now, that was wonderful. That was a great album. But then you get into 1971, you got the, oh gosh, anybody remember Lowdown? Going into the summer of 71, down, 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 that great guitar. And then you got Peter Cetera's impassioned vocals rolling across that rock and roll melody of Lowdown. But it wasn't one of their biggest hits, though. But if you're a Chicago fan, I know you remember that. Just tell me about it. And then the summer of 71, you had Color My World beginnings, and then Question 67 and 68 re-released the fall of 71. Went to something like number 23, 24, 25 on Billboard's Hot 100. But let's roll it up. Actually, let's roll it up to 1978. A guy named Bill Champlin. He was in a group called Son of Champlin. He had released a couple of solo albums in the late 70s, early 80s. Didn't do too well. The albums did not fare very well at all, although they were produced by David Foster, a legend. Fall of 78. Oh my goodness. Let's not go into that. Keith Moon died in the fall of 78. And then Terry Kath of Chicago died in the fall of 78. I mean, that's just boom, boom. It was just a shock. It was depressing. Well, here's what happened, though. When Terry Kath died, Bill Champlin got a call from somebody associated with Chicago. And that person asked Bill Champlin, how would you like to join Chicago? We need somebody to replace Terry Kath. How would you like to audition? And Bill Champlin replied, I can't fill this guy's shoes. You're asking me to replace Terry Kath? No, I can't do it. But nonetheless, he did some work with Chicago. He teamed up with Danny Serafin, the drummer of Chicago. They wrote some songs, and Danny Serafin was a big advocate for Bill Champlin. Eventually, Bill Champlin joined the group. I believe it was around 1981, and he surfaced on Chicago 17. He sang Hard Habit to Break with Peter Cetera. Hard Habit to Break was a pretty big hit for Chicago. At either top 10 or top 20, 1984 by Chicago. But let's fast forward to Chicago 19. Bill Champlin played a big role on this album. He sang lead on this record for sure. You're Not Alone. There was Look Away. I Don't Want to Live Without Your Love. Look Away. one of the big hits off the album, written by Diane Warren, who wrote hit records by Aerosmith, Celine Dion, and I believe she wrote Rhythm of the Night, The Barge. And she wrote I Don't Want to Live Without Your Love. She teamed up and wrote that song with Albert Hammond. Yes, the Albert Hammond who did It Never Rains in Southern California in '72, and the absolutely brilliant and genius Free Electric Band in 1973, and I'm a Train in 1974. Albert Hammond co-wrote this song with Diane Warren. I Don't Want to Live Without Your Love. You're Not Alone written. They brought in a lot of outside songwriters for this album. That's the bottom line. Jim Scott wrote this song, You're Not Alone. He wrote Love Sneaking Up on You. Remember that by Bonnie Raitt? Jim Scott also wrote that with Tom Snow, I believe, was the other guy who wrote that song, Love Sneaking Up on You. I know I'm throwing a lot of things at you, but you know, I find out all this stuff is like, God, I gotta share this with somebody. It's the joy of learning, man. It's just, it's, it's rapture. Caught up in the rapture, as Anita Baker once sang. Well, it's at number 19, Chicago, You're Not Alone, Fantasy Playlist, March 18th, 1989.